Let's call the Northwest Suburbs Cable Commission meeting to order. First item on the agenda is a consent agenda, the approval of the minutes from the February 16th meeting and the treasurer's report. Questions? Otherwise, is there a motion? Thanks, Helen. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Roger. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, action items, insurance liability waiver. This is an annual.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have each year the Northwest Suburbs Cable Communications Commission votes not to waive the monetary limits on municipal tort liability. The tort liability is established by Minnesota Statute 466.04, for those of you interested in going to the statute and reading it. By doing this action, you are basically affirming that the Cable Commission simply requests liability coverage equal to the statutory limits. We are insured through the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust, and so we need to sign a liability waiver form to either waive or not to waive the monetary limits after official action has been taken by the Cable Commission. And so basically, in a nutshell, we are requesting that the Cable Commission vote to not waive the monetary limits on municipal tort liability.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Motion to approve? Staff recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you, Joni. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, George. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Opposed? I guess I should do that, huh? All right, approved. Thank you very much. All right, next we have an open at large Northwest CT board appointment. Mike?
That is correct. At our November 21st, 2013 meeting several years back, the Cable Commission approved a process to appoint Northwest Community Television volunteer producers to the NWCT board if there was not interest from a Cable Commission member. Most recently, we had one open at-large appointment available after Rex Newman retired at the end of 2016. We advertised the open at-large position at to the NWCT volunteers, and I'm happy to report that we had 3 applications and interest in serving on the board, and that was Mike Hanrahan, Cheryl Moline, and James Tade. We interviewed the 3 candidates in April. Basically, Al Matson was the interviewer. I was sitting in there to answer any questions. We had an excellent field of candidates for the board. Each of the applicants expressed interest in serving in the future if they were not selected. And Al is recommending to the full commission that you appoint NWCT volunteer Cheryl Moline to a 2-year term starting at the first meeting in September.
Thank you. So I assume you need a formal action?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion appointing Cheryl?
I move to appoint Cheryl Moline to the open at-large NWCT board position.
Thank you, Bill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Helen. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Cheryl's appointed. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks to all the applicants who expressed their interest. That's great. Next, cable and telecommunications update. I believe that goes to Mike Bradley. Or do you want to?
Well, I'll just start off just saying that there is an enormous, things have been crazy along, and in fact, I sent another action email to you just late yesterday. There's a lot of activity happening in the world of telecommunications and telecom legislation. This is happening at a breakneck speed. The industry, the wireless and cable industry is trying to get things changed now because of the political environment and who has majorities and who doesn't. I've asked Mike to present an update on both the local and national telecommunications issues. So we'll take it away, Mike.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Mike, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, like Mike said, there's a lot of activity going on at the state legislature right now, and you have in your packets a memorandum from me. The first item in that memorandum was a legislative alert on House File 739, and as Mike said, we prepared another legislative alert with more detail on that particular bill. And yesterday we had indicated that there was going to be that bill was going to be brought up. House File 739 was going to be brought up to the Jobs Committee in the House of Representatives. It was yesterday, and it did pass out of committee, and so that bill is now on the House floor. We're not sure what exactly is going to happen with that bill, but our recommendation in that alert was to, consider that bill and consider, reaching out to your legislative delegation to indicate, your support or opposition to that particular bill. Just as a reminder, House File 739 is a bill relating to small cell antennas and the placement of those small cell antennas on municipal property and other private property, as well as what cities can charge for attaching to public property. And if you look at that bill, you'll see that it really wipes out discretion for cities when considering the placement of small cell antennas on the public property. And it also really significantly reduces the amount of fair market value rent considerations that a city can receive for a private company attaching telecommunications facilities on public property. It really affects all cities, but if your city owns its light poles, it really affects your city. So you should really take a good hard look at that piece of legislation. The League of Minnesota Cities has worked throughout the session on this bill. They've done a terrific job. It's not clear to us if it's going to be brought up on the House floor. It does not appear to have support in the Senate right now. So we'll have to see, where things shake out. There's only 4 or 5 days left in the session, but as you all probably know, that's a lifetime for a bill. So we really encourage you to look at that. Look at the memorandum that we sent out yesterday that gives a background on what on the technology that we're looking at. We're looking at wireless 5G, small cell antennas, as well as Wi-Fi antennas that the cable companies are installing throughout your cities. The purpose of the legislation, which is really the purpose, because this legislation essentially was sponsored by AT&T and Verizon, the purpose is really to give wireless companies as quick and as cheap access to public property to put their wireless antennas on public property as cheap as possible. And then I list out a laundry list of concerns. So take a look at that, and there's no commission action item. It's really an action item for your cities to, consider addressing your legislative delegations. There are several FCC proceedings going on at the same time, and 2 of them really are addressing the same issues that the state is addressing, which is one of the reasons why, we think that state legislation isn't necessary, because it's the FCC is currently looking at, many of the same issues that are being addressed in state legislation. But there's 2 proceedings relating to small cell deployment in the country, and in our memorandum, it's the wireless broadband deployment proceeding and the wireline broadband deployment proceeding. Comments are due on the wireless proceeding June 9th, and comments are due on June 15th on the wireline proceeding. Again, it's not an action item for this commission. We'll be following what the national municipal organizations are doing, but as a telecommunications commission, I thought it'd be worth your while to know that those proceedings are going on. A third proceeding that is happening is the repeal of net neutrality, and the FCC is starting that process today. So later today, net neutrality will be back on the table, and as I understand it, comments in that proceeding will be due on July 17th, and we'll keep you apprised of what's happening in that proceeding. And if you remember the last time around with net neutrality, it generated a lot of comments. So I noted in our memorandum that it generated over 4 million comments last time around, and I suspect it'll draw a similar interest this time around. I thought of interest too on the cable side was the city of Seattle's creation of a internet privacy rule. And the city of Seattle has developed a rule that requires all of the franchise cable operators to respect the privacy, the internet privacy of all of their customers. And basically the rule prohibits the cable providers, franchise cable providers in the city of Seattle. It prohibits them from collecting personal data and internet surfing data on their subscribers. It only applies to the franchise cable operators. It does not apply to a company like Google, which is the major search engine in the country. And all of the franchise cable operators, the city of Seattle happens to have 3. They have, and they're similar to us with the exception of one. They have Comcast, CenturyLink, and then another company called Wave Broadband. All of the companies said they don't collect that data currently, so it's not going to affect them terribly. But it was kind of an interesting development, I thought, on at least trying to protect subscriber data as best they could. Couple other issues related to Comcast, not on the cable side, but on the wireless telephone side. Comcast announced that it will be providing wireless phone services to subscribers in the coming months. And they also announced that they entered into a partnership with Charter Communications, which is the other large cable operator here in the Twin Cities, and really throughout the country now too. And those two companies will be combining resources in order to provide a Wi-Fi wireless network to subscribers. For areas where Comcast subscribers are out of a Wi-Fi range, the two companies both will use Verizon Wireless as their kind of cellular backup service. So now your franchise cable operator is providing cable, it's providing internet, it's providing phone, it's providing security, and now it's going to provide wireless telephone service as well. And when you see that information, and then you see how the cable industry has been very involved in the state legislation involving wireless antennas, you can kind of see why, because they're getting into that arena. And they've been planning for this for some time. And while cable wasn't out front on this legislation at the state level, they were in negotiations and in discussions the entire time. And when you look at that last bill that got passed out of the House Jobs Committee, there is specific exemptions for what they called micro wireless facilities. And when you put 2 and 2 together, these micro wireless facilities that in the language in the House bill says they don't need to get any permits or pay any fees. When you look at that definition of what a micro wireless antenna facility is, it's a Wi-Fi antenna. So, and it's kind of interesting too, because I think that a lot of cities don't realize that these antennas have been going up. And in my view, I don't think they've been applying for any special permits to have these antennas in the public rights of way. So it's something else to perhaps look at. In my view, I don't see how these wireless devices related in any way to a cable system for the provision of cable service. It's something completely different. So while we've granted a cable franchise to Comcast to construct and operate and maintain a cable system, these types of facilities, I think, go beyond what a cable communication system is. So with that, that's my report for today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mike. Bill?
So like in your second memo, you indicated that the way the bill is drafted in the House, that the facility on the pole could be as big as a refrigerator or a telephone booth. How big are these things that they put on the posts typically, And why would there be a reason to put a larger one than the typical ones on?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commission Director. That's a really good question, and you have to kind of step back and think about what these wireless facilities really are going to be when they're looking at deploying them on poles. So when you think of a wireless antenna, you just think of an antenna, but that's not the only thing that's happening when they're installing these antennas on poles. There is an antenna typically on the top of a pole, like a light pole, but that antenna needs a lot more. It needs to draw power. It needs to have fiber brought up to the antenna, because the way that this new technology is going to be effective is it's going to be very, very fiber rich, so that this next generation of wireless called 5G is going to be able to provide much richer internet service, and it won't be quite as high perhaps as what cable can provide right now, but it's going to be a lot closer. You know, it'll certainly be better than DSL service, for example. And so because all these other things have to be, you know, connecting to this antenna, they need more space on these poles than just the very top where the antenna goes. So they need a place to put, you know, maybe a power supply box, fiber, battery backup. There's a lot of different things that need to happen in order for these antennas and these systems to work.
So you don't have any idea what percentage of the poles that are having things on them would have something as big as a refrigerator or half of a refrigerator?
Madam Chair and Commission Director, no, but the way the bill reads is it would be every pole, possibly.
Right.
Other questions, comments? All right, thank you. Oh, yes, sir.
Mike, can you talk a little bit about one thing like the slippery slope of this? You know, like you said, in your view, it's not a cable system, but at the same time, you know, and I know. I mean, I was at the Broadband Communities Conference in Dallas, and I sit on the national board of NATOA. This is like a really hot topic because this type of legislation could ultimately affect what we do here in terms of local cable franchise fees. So can you just address that just for a little bit?
Well, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair and Mike. Just taking a kind of a step back and kind of looking at the bigger picture of what we're looking at here. When you think about the next generation of wireless, knowing that it's going to have a much more capabilities because it's connected to all this fiber, you can see that it's going to be much more than just your cell phone or even your current smartphone device. There's going to be enough bandwidth there for these wireless companies to provide cable service, and you're going to be able to see that they'll really, in my view, in let's say 3 or 4 or 5 years, the only difference between what Comcast is providing for video service and what an AT&T could provide is going to be the fact that there's no cable going from the antenna to your home. But the service is going to be essentially the same, I think, and kind of taking that a step further when you're looking at kind of the cable industry as a whole right now. Once we passed our franchise with CenturyLink just 2 months later announced that it wasn't going to be seeking any more franchises in the Twin Cities or across the country. And they weren't the only phone company that was going into the cable business that decided to pull back. And so that was I became curious. Well, why are you doing that, right? And the answer was we're re-examining why we're going into the cable business. What are the competitive forces going into the cable business? And the primary concerns that they had and this is more than just one company, it was the AT&T and DirecTV deal was cited. And initially, and this is back, in December, I was trying to figure out, well, why does that make a big difference? Well, when you kind of project it out over the course of a few years, you can see that when AT&T acquired DirecTV, now it has all that video content that it can provide and push out over its wireless network. That's going to be really hard to compete with. And the other thing that the operators talked about as far as challenges in the competitive video market is competing with the Comcast on programming contracts. It's very difficult because they're much smaller than Comcast. They don't own the programming like Comcast does. And so it's hard to compete on that margin on video. And then one other issue that they had was the rolling of trucks out to install cable at all these places. And as I started looking at all this, they started to realize this is a real challenge to to compete in the video space. And so so anyway, I think I'm trying to answer your question in kind of a broadening way. How this can affect cable down the road is that these systems are going to be capable of competing head-to-head with the current cabled or franchise cable operators here in this area. And it becomes an issue, I think, down the road once that starts happening as to whether or not these traditional wireless phone companies are actually providing a cable service under the federal and state laws. And it seems to me that if they're providing the same type of content that a Comcast is, and they have fiber in the right-of-way, which they will, and they're providing that same sort of service, it looks like a cable service to me, projecting that down the road. And you have to be very careful of this type of legislation. One of the things that it has in there that it says that if a company has authority to be in the right-of-way to provide a type of communication service, a city can't start charging for a different type of communication service later. Well, you can see that could really have an impact on local governments, throughout the state of Minnesota if that type of language became law.
Joni?
If CenturyLink is not going to get in the business, then how is that going to affect us? I mean, are they going to be as interested in serving our residents and communities because they maybe won't have the dedication that they would have had if they were going to want to expand and prove that they could provide what they said they were going to?
Madam Chair and Commission Director, it's a good question. I'm really interested to see the next round of quarterly meetings, and it makes me happy that we have those quarterly meetings in our franchises. Their statements to us have been, we CenturyLink are going to be abiding by all of those cable franchises that we entered into, that we have invested millions of dollars, we meaning CenturyLink have invested millions of dollars in the Twin Cities market, and we're not just going to abandon that. But at the same time, we've seen an exodus of personnel from CenturyLink that were working on all this cable franchising, in the months leading to the adoption of the cable franchise for CenturyLink. And so we'll have to keep our eye on what it is that they're doing.
Well, we've had our own issues with them in Golden Valley, changing our ordinances and to meet their needs, and then they want more, and then they don't get it, and they back out. So it worries me.
Well, and Madam Chair and members, you'll recall when we adopted that franchise for CenturyLink back in October, there were two very well-respected CenturyLink employees here, and both are gone now. which I think is very unfortunate for CenturyLink.
Other questions? Thank you, Mike and Mike. All right, is there any other business? All right. If there's no other business, is there a motion to adjourn? Thanks, George. Thanks, Kirk. Further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The commission meeting is adjourned, but don't leave. We've got a Northwest Community Television Board meeting coming up.
All right, so we'll call the Board of Directors meeting. First thing on the agenda are the consent items with the approval of the minutes and the treasurer's report. Got a motion, is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, and we have a couple presentations.
Yes, Madam Chair, we want to talk a little bit about computer network security, and what perfect timing with all that you have been hearing about and reading about in the national news and local news about ransomware. We have taken many steps over the past year to tighten up security. In fact, whenever LOGIS gives us new opportunities for security, we take it very seriously, and we implement these procedures. Sean Christie, who is behind camera number 1 over there, is our IT director, and we owe a lot to him for coordinating this effort with LOGIS and keeping our network as safe and secure as possible. And of course, everyone knows there's no such thing as 100% security because the hackers are always trying to outsmart the people in IT security. So, and this most recent outbreak of this ransomware problem is surely something that is extremely eye-opening. We did implement some computer training awareness, which I would highly recommend. I think I mentioned it briefly at our last meeting, but I will tell you this, that we did some testing prior with staff in terms of clicking on links, and we had, staff was clicking on links that maybe they shouldn't have had, and this happens everywhere. It's not just our staff, this is every employee all over the country. You implement this training, and we implemented training about attachments and all kinds of things, because the weakest link is not so much the computer security itself in terms of the network, but it is at the employee level. And so it's very important that you get your employees trained in on computer security. So if your cities have not done that, I'd highly recommend it. And the interactive training that LOGIS provided is phenomenal. And we saw our click rate numbers go way down after this training. So what I would like to do is, well, first say thanks to Sean, our IT director here, for all the work that he's done in terms of network security and our computer networks. But I would like to also introduce Demetrius Hilton and Kevin Pickering, both from LOGIS. And some of you here on this board have actually sat on the LOGIS board and are familiar with the organization. And so we would just like them to talk just a little bit about the importance of computer network security. And so we'll take it away.
Well, thank you very much, Mike and Marcia. And I'd like to thank everybody for being invited to come on out and talk to the group here. My name is Kevin Pickering. I'm the Manager of Network Services and Operations at LOGIS. And we're going to be talking over basically the LOGIS approach to being able not only to secure LOGIS's environment, but our membership too. And steps we've done for kind of a defense in depth strategy to be able to kind of assist all of our members. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Demetrius. He's a LOGIS security specialist and very much responsible for a great deal of what's going on in security at LOGIS. Demetrius?
Thank you. Good morning. Kevin is actually way too kind, because if it wasn't for Kevin allocating all the resources at LOGIS and also the cooperation and involvement excuse me, that all of the cities have provided and shared together, we wouldn't be where we were or where we are today. So with that in mind, probably everybody has read about the enormous, excuse me, anxiety around the news starting last Friday. And not that this is 100% accurate, but so far I have not heard of any single outbreak within the consortium, I haven't heard any reports. I certainly have seen many of our security tools at different layers and different types of security tools catch things, and so we're thankful for that. So with that in mind, I thought maybe I'd just give you a brief history from my point of view of when I first started working for Logis in 2015. So I came in at the end of 2015. And I pretty much had a cubicle to myself and ended the year doing basic security stuff. You know, I'd see a little malware here, you know, a little adware here. I'd send off an email, and then broke away for Christmas. Took my kids to Chicago, and that is where am reminded of what sometimes is called the calm before the storm, or the quiet before the storm. And so I came back at the beginning of 2016, and bam, was the first wave of ransomware. Ransomware cost the United States approximately $1 billion in 2016, according to the FBI. However, down in the trenches, we felt it, and we had one city in the western suburbs report to us that within a 2-month period of time, they were hit 5 times with ransomware. Little beknownst to me at the time, our director had pre-allocated a large amount of money for what I kind of refer to as a security uplift. Now, what that was going to look like was hard to tell, but the timing of his budgeting for that for the consortium and to do things that would benefit the consortium was very timely, because we could not have acted sooner and evaluated many layers of security, which is what you see in your excuse me, what you see in your packet. Some of those most important pieces were installing a very expensive perimeter IPS, which is detailed in your packet. That really helped block stuff so that when we're sleeping at night, we can be assured, and actually when we're trying to work during the day, we can be assured that instead of having to stop what you're doing and investigating stuff, this stuff just gets blocked automatically. But that just doesn't happen out of nowhere. So my job, instead of me being sort of directly responsible for security, dramatically changed. And up at Logis, we have, I would characterize it as kind of 4 major groups. We have a service desk, which is kind of like your helpline. We have a systems group, which protects and works on all the servers and the virtualization. And then we have a infrastructure group, which deals with the firewall and the IPS and everything. And what ended up happening was Kevin made a decision. I thought it was a good one. Demetrius, you cannot do this by yourself. Therefore, he made security everybody's responsibility. And so then I took that a step further, and I reached out to the IT management community, and I said, you know what? We can't do this alone at Logis. We really need you guys to share with us your research and your security ideas. And ever since then, as we come into 2017, we've got this massive cooperation going on and information exchange. And as I mentioned at one of our quarterly meetings with the IT management group, I sit on a board of fellow security professionals throughout the Twin Cities area. And I've got to tell you, government, at least local government, is outshining many private companies because you were smart enough to foresee this stuff, not knowing what form it was going to take, but you just felt that there was something is coming. This security thing is not going away. It's going to get more aggressive. It's going to get unrelentless, with nation states having armies of hackers, of private hacker groups, really, really understanding how to break into almost anything. And so with that in mind, we have been in a very stable position, although we don't want to ever get overconfident, right? Because it's going to continue to happening, but I really do say that I'm proud of the fellow government employees that have really stepped up to the plate. And that means when something hits the news, if you looked at my inbox, you would see emails coming from my fellow staff, you would see emails coming from the community, and then all of that processed at Logis and then sent back out in very thoughtful recommendations and action steps on how to do things. And that certainly includes you, Sean. Thank you very much, since we're here at your organization today. And with that in mind, I just wanted to give you a chance to ask any questions. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I'd rather answer any specific questions people have, and if there's still time, I certainly have a few additional stories.
Any questions?
I would just like to thank Logis for all that. We've been members of the consortium, boy, almost from the very beginning when our organization started. And it's just been a phenomenal resource for us. And I know all the cities who are LOGIS member cities see this as a very valuable resource. We could never do this alone, and I always believe there's strength in numbers. And you know, Kevin's been there nearly since day one, and I got to thank him too for all that he's done. He's always there. He's like OnStar. I mean, literally, he will be there when you need him. And we've had some crises here. You know, every entity has over time, and they take it seriously, and we can always rely on them. So we please pass it on to Mr. Garris, your executive director. We're very happy with all of your work, and Demetrius, we're glad to have you on board here in the last couple of years, just focusing primarily on this issue, this important issue of security.
Maybe in closing remarks, I could let you know that Twin Cities had one of the biggest security conferences here this week. It ended yesterday afternoon, and one of the key players that showed up to speak and to work with some security groups, such as one of mine. She was the former deputy of Homeland Security for the Obama administration, and her responsibility was all the cyber stuff. And she mentioned, and then I talked to her later on, that she was worried about the fact that she does not see anything coming from the federal level that will really reinforce local and county cybersecurity. And so I thought about it for a little bit, and I asked her, I said, are you saying that the only way that we're really going to be able to tackle this issue is the model that LOGIS provided by pooling together all the resources as you just heard me describe? And she said, yes. So I don't know what other affirmation that you need for spending the money, dedicating the time, tapping us when we all know that we all have many, many other things to do. It's just the way it's going to be, and I think I wanted to make those stories known to you guys so that you feel like the things that are going well and some of the challenges and maybe things that have happened in the past, which can be a little nerve-wracking, it's completely normal. But what do you do about those things? And more importantly, what do you do about what we still don't know about in the future? So I was delighted to hear that Kevin has once again, without me knowing until a few weeks ago, he has already thought ahead, and it looks like I might even get another colleague security professional in the consortium again. And I think that will be a welcome addition, and we know that we continue to have to look forward into the future. So sometimes I like to use the expression, we got your back so you can work during the day, and vice versa. All of you, and Sean's got my back too. It's a nice way to work, and I'm very proud of the things that people are doing in local government here in Minnesota.
Once again, thank you very much, Mike, for the kind words. Thank you, Marcia and Ann, for allowing us to be here in the group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Demetrius. So the next thing we have is the rebrand survey results.
Yes, I will pass this on to Dave Kaiser, who has been coordinating our whole rebranding effort. We implemented a survey kind of short into the process. We still got a long ways to go with our rebranding, but it was felt that maybe we should do kind of a quick survey to begin with, and then maybe do one later. And Dave, you want to take it away?
I'll bring my microphone with me. How about that? Yes, thank you for the opportunity to give you an update on the survey. And again, this is part of our work with CEL Marketing, the group that helped us with the rebranding. So this was something that was built in from the front, that we knew at some point through the process, again, about this point through the process, we were going to look at a survey of a couple of different groups to get some feedback on how is the rebranding going, to give us a benchmark. It is early in the process. They told us this could be a couple-year process. So it's early on, but we wanted to see what people were thinking. So I'll direct you to the first page that we have inside. Thank you, Mike. And we had 3 different groups that were surveyed within this. They were our key stakeholders, or in a nutshell, that's our Gov Delivery group. These are city leaders, community leaders, commission members, and people from the general public who sign up to get our emails related to topics we're sending out through news and sports. We also had a volunteer group. That was our volunteers here at CCX Create. And then we also surveyed our staff, our own staff here at CCX Media. So prior to the survey, the question was, did you know that Northwest Community Television and Channel 12 had been rebranded? So again, we wanted to know before receiving the survey, had they noticed it had been rebranded? And obviously the blue is a good sign. So the message is getting out that people are understanding that we have rebranded, that Channel 12 and Northwest Community Television is running under a different name, so 82 and 86%. So we start off with a very good thought there. The next slide talks about, were you aware that we had 4 major content areas? And if you recall back to when we talked about doing the rebranding, this was one of the key points that we wanted to work towards, that we thought there were people out in the public and some of our stakeholders that knew 1 area or 2 areas or maybe 3 areas but did not understand all the organization did. And if you take a look at the information here, prior to the brand change, were they aware? 50% said yes, but there's a very large group of the stakeholders that did not know that we had the 4 areas. So that reinforces what we thought was the case and obviously gives us some work to do related to that. Good to see that our volunteers, the people that do the work here in the Create area of our building, do know that there are the 4 brands. So we're very happy to see that internally, even the volunteers understand all that happens in this building. Next slide, Mike. Rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how you feel the brand represents the content that is produced by this organization. And this is the first where you'll see some of the staff responses as well. So you see this key stakeholders, and again, 5 being it strongly represents what we're doing as far as a brand. You see the key stakeholders seem to be catching it. They seem to understand what connected community experience means and how that relates to the content that we're producing. The volunteers as well, we have some work to be done there. And on the staff end, and this is something we see in a couple slides that you'll see in a second, and we were told by our group that was doing the rebranding that this would be the case. That would take a little bit of time for the staff that has been Channel 12 for 15, 20 years to start to move to something different. So obviously some work that needs to be done on the staff end, but we draw more of our attention obviously from the external standpoint to those stakeholders, that people do seem to be understanding what connected community experience means and how it represents the content that we deliver to the public. Next slide. Does the brand change help CCX Media better reflect our mission? And again, this is something that we wanted to see, is the mission then that you worked with us on tying into the brand change. You'll see that the key stakeholders is above 50%, so we're happy to see that that is above half, and we think we can continue to grow that as we work more on our mission, and we are looking at ways to get that mission more out in the public and also here in the building itself. Opposite end on the staff, again, the staff 52.6%, not feeling that it helps better reflect our mission. So again, we have some work to be done, and we are working with CEL on some internal things to talk about that and to talk about ways that we can give our staff people a short elevator speech, if you will, to be able to have something top of mind when they go out and are able to talk to people about what is CCX Media, what does connected community experience mean. So that's something that we're working on. Next slide. Does it make it easier for you to explain all that we do to people outside of our organization? Again, this was a question specifically asked to staff. And again, you can see the response there, 63% said no. So there's a tool that they need, or a few tools that they need, and that is something we're talking to CEL about, is how can we better equip our staff to be able to talk to people outside of our organization and let them know what we do. And we think part of that is they are familiar with how affiliates are communicated and how a channel with a channel number is communicated, but this concept of how our content is explained, being communicated to people, is a little tougher to talk about. So we are working again on a short elevator speech to help with that. We thought while we had people's ear, we would ask them a few questions about viewership and content itself. So you can see the question here relates to how frequently do you watch CCX Media content? And again, among our key stakeholders that responded, you see that the 8.8 is a everyday level, so that is excellent. That's what we wanted to see, is that people are tuning in to Channel 799, Channel 12, and our Create channels on a day-to-day basis. And also the amount that was the multiple times a week is 38%. So again, a very good number to see, and we hope to continue to grow that part of the pie. Volunteers, again, obviously many of them are looking in to see their own content and their own programs. So you see many are watching multiple times per week. There was not an everyday response on the volunteer end of it, so that's why there's not the darker blue. Next question talks about where do you watch CCX media content? And again, if you remember back, this was a big part of the branding discussion, is that we have this feeling that people are not watching us only on our cable channels, that there are other ways that they are getting our content. And again, this group may be a little bit skewed because this is that group that's connected through our Gov delivery system to content that is emailed out on a daily basis, or also our Week in Review email content that goes to all of the stakeholders in this group. And that stakeholder group is a group of about 1,900 people that we are sending emails out to on a regular basis that sign up for it voluntarily. So you see in the stakeholder group, obviously cable TV rates high, but you see that website is sneaking above the cable TV, and that's something we believe is happening, that people are looking for content on their computer, on their devices that they have to be able to see it when they're out and about, and also at home. The app and also YouTube and city websites, you'll see how they rank as well. Interesting, on the staff level, we have even between the cable TV channel and the website, and a little more use of that app on our staff level as opposed to the other levels, and we think that could be something that grows. And as we work with our website, that app and website are going to blend a little bit more together through the process we're working on with CEL with our website. And again, you see the volunteers, much of their viewing is on the cable TV channels because that is mainly where their content is produced. I think we'll see more of theirs going to the website and to YouTube as time marches on. But the main use of the channels is obviously for the volunteer programming. Next slide, and I believe this is the last slide, talks about which content areas do you watch? So again, out of those 4 sub-brands, we wanted to check with people, what do you watch? What are you looking at as you watch? And these are just the top responses that they gave. So 1 being the highest response and down to 4 being the lowest response. So you see among those key stakeholders, the news does very well. People want to know what is happening in their community, and we supply that information. You see the sports in the red. We do have that very faithful sports audience that is watching us as well. And the city information obviously is a little lower on number 1, but number 2 and 3, that city content, which we produce for you as cities in our area, not only the short community corner segments, but the council meetings are very well received. Amongst the volunteers, they are watching news at a good level, but as you might expect, that green hops up there quite a bit, so our volunteers are watching their own programming and watching the programming of the other producers they work with. But good to see as well from a city content standpoint that a number of the volunteers in the second ranking you see there are interested in what's happening in their own communities and watching some of that city content as well. So in a couple minutes, that gives you a little recap of some of the questions. There were a few more that we asked, but these were the ones that we thought would be most appropriate for you to see and give you some information about what that benchmark is now after a short period of time of changing to CCX. And again, it gives us some things internally to work on, especially with our staff, to continue that process of having them understand and be able to tell people what CCX is. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
So Dave, will you be doing the survey again in 6 months or a year to see if any of the attitudes have changed?
Yes, definitely we will.
All right.
And it's a very easy tool that CEL has worked with us on, so it was a very quick process to be able to put it together. And we have that good group of people that we can use on the email survey process that already know a little bit about us, so they're good to get some responses back from. So yes, we will.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, just a quick report on various things. We are scheduled to meet, as Mike mentioned, with CenturyLink at the end of the month. Right now, it's scheduled for May 31st at 1:30 p.m. We're waiting to hear back from the one and only representative left in the group from CenturyLink, who is out of town at the moment. But once we hear for sure it's confirmed, we'll send out a note. Anybody is interested in attending that, you can certainly do so. We'll give you a little recap at the end of that meeting once we receive information from them in terms of how well they're doing in the northwest suburbs in terms of deployment of the CenturyLink service. Every couple of years, we must submit to a pay equity reporting by Minnesota statute. I want the commission and the board to know that the pay equity department reported back to us that we are in 100% compliance with the pay equity law. So that's always good news. Audit field work was completed last week. Every year at this time, financial audit field work takes place, and then we present the audit in September. So they're still working on putting all the reports together and everything for our September meeting. We hope to have a final update on the Wells Fargo case with the League of Minnesota Cities in upcoming weeks, so that's looking good. The MACTA annual conference will be on Wednesday, June 21st. MACTA is like the state version of NATOA, which is the National Association of Telecommunications Administrators. MACTA is a board that I had sat on for a while before going to the national board, and they have an annual conference at the University of Minnesota. If any member is interested, again, it's on Wednesday, June 21st. I can send out a reminder to everybody. If you're interested, we can sign you up for that. It's an all-day event. Dave will be speaking on a panel discussion about news, and I don't know. I think I was out of the room when they chose me to be a moderator to moderate with three attorneys, one of them being Mike Bradley here, three of the attorneys who deal in cable franchising. And so I have to kind of, keep them all in line, all three attorneys, and keep them on schedule. And so I will be doing that on that same day in an afternoon forum about cable franchising. And so we'll learn a lot more about that at that time.
Unbelievable. It's going to be huge.
It's going to be huge, so you may want to sign up. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors. That will be the session to attend. As mentioned in previous meetings, the Alliance for Community Media National Conference is July 12th. We do have several members here who are interested in attending, and we have signed them up. If anybody else is interested, it's like the 12th through the 14th, so it's a 3-day commitment. Certainly, if you are interested, let me know, and we'll get you signed up. Other good news is that we discovered that there's an electronic employee handbook. The wave of the future is to do some type of online version that constantly gets updated. So the Society of Human Resource Management that both Wendy and I belong to, and a lot of the city HR people belong to, offers this product that is constantly updated for employees. As you know, you can do an employee manual and it could be out of date like 2 weeks later because the laws are constantly changing. So we had the opportunity to go over to the city of New Hope with some of Kirk's staff who are experimenting with a new version through this software program that is similarly offered through the Society of Human Resource Management, and they are currently working on this electronic version. And so throughout the summer, we will be working on getting our employee manual up to date. We'll most likely call the policies and activities group together, and the plan is at least to get a first draft to our September meeting to the full board and commission to get your input on that, and then ultimately final approval at some point. But I want to thank the City of New Hope for giving us this opportunity to learn from them and all the work that Wendy has done on this project so far. And we've got a lot of work to do. There's so many details in doing these things, but we're going to get it done, and we've got a aggressive schedule to do so. Let's see here. Oh, I cannot forget this before I got two more items here. One is I want to thank Dave Carlson. Now, not everybody in this room knows who Dave Carlson is, but he is sitting right back there. He's I have known Dave in one form or another, mainly from the world of Wayzata AV, audiovisual, and all the cable work he's done over the years. Dave is retiring at the end of this school year, and I just want to thank Dave personally on behalf of Northwest Community Television and CCX Media for all that he has done over the years. He has sat here as an associate member, been very loyal to this group since the early 80s, and has done so much for the Wayzata schools and has worked with us for many years. Very pleasant person to work with. He will be sorely missed, I will say that. And I know Dave wanted to say a couple of words, so maybe now would be a good time.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike, and Madam Chair, members of the commission. It's been my pleasure to be here for the last 15 years representing Wayzata schools. I run the EdsTV Educational Access Channel for Wayzata and Robbinsdale school districts. Before that, as Mike mentioned, I go back to working with Northwest Community Television through Intermediate District 287, and before that, I was AV and TV director for Hennepin County Library System. So we ran the old library channel back in the 80s and early 90s on whatever the cable system was at that time, store or and so I go way back with Mike and Dave and John and Tim and Barb, and it's been a great pleasure to work with them over the years. Also wanted to thank the commission because you've done a great job over the years in maintaining a world-class facility here and maintaining a great staff. I get great cooperation from working with everybody, and now Sean and Jamie too from the technical side. And I just wanted to thank the commission for your help in keeping this all together. So, thanks.
Thanks, Dave. And finally, I want to segue, well, actually, I'm sorry, I lied. There's actually two more items. One is I want to make sure that everybody knows that if anybody's interested in a short tour afterwards, to follow me up afterwards. And I want to show you some of the things that have taken place with Phase 1 of our remodeling. It's really quite a difference up on the other side of the building that had seen no remodeling since the day we moved into the building in 1985-86 timeframe. So I think you'll really like how it turned out up there. So for those of you that can attend, great. If you can't, anytime you want to walk in, I'd be more than happy to give you a personal tour. Finally, I had an opportunity to see the Brooklyn Park History Program. It's been a long time in the making, and Dave is going to talk about this. But I want to thank Dave Kaiser for coordinating this effort with two key staff people. Dave has worked with Roger Larson, who is kind of the head of making all the technical things come to life. He's a creative genius here amongst the rest of our staff. We are really blessed to have these people on board. And he worked closely with Matt Kilby, who directs our news. And I had a screening of this, personal screening beyond the screening that took place that Dave will talk about with a larger group. And the show is phenomenal. It is absolutely a treasure for any city that has a history program. So this is like the second one that we have now under our belt, the first one being Robbinsdale and now Brooklyn Park. So we're very, very excited to launch this, and I want to thank Dave for coordinating this effort. We got many cities to go. It's a very time-consuming process, but in the end, when I see them, it's just like, wow. It's absolutely amazing to see this. So Dave, take it away.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, it has been a fun project to work with, and so city number 2 is complete, and you'll see a couple people right over here on this side of the room in the video itself. Daryl and Zipporah were key parts of helping this come together. Also, other early farmers that you might know, Eldon Tessman, one of the key parts of our video as well. So it was a good chance to look back at the city of Brooklyn Park. We did have a premiere showing at the Brooklyn Park Rotary meeting in the early part of May. Very well received. A number of people, again, involved in the community for a number of years were there, and we watched their faces as they watched the video, and you could see them turn and go, I remember that, or I remember that face. So it was very interesting to watch. It's about 36 minutes long. We have a short couple-minute clip for you here today. The good part out of that meeting as well is there were people that were on the CLIC committee and some of the commissions within the city saying, we need this video right away. We need to let people know the history of Brooklyn Park and all that came together to make the wonderful city that it is. So we were very glad to hear that, and we think there are many other ways that this video is going to be shown. Let's take a minute or two to take a look at the Brooklyn Park history.
We'll send everybody a link so you can watch the entire program in the luxury of your own laptop, computer, or smartphone if you wish. Dave, do I need to do 2 clicks here?
There were more carloads of potatoes shipped out of Osseo than any other shipping point in the U.S. We were known as the potato capital of the world at that time.
The idea for Brooklyn Park was always to have a park within a couple of minutes of every home, and they've done that.
And that plan absolutely was critical to how the city has developed throughout the last 20 years, without a doubt. because this was the place to go, and this is where things were happening.
We have our own diversity within Brooklyn Park, and it's just wonderful. It's really special. You can't go anywhere else and find it, so that's what makes Brooklyn Park so wonderful.
A long time Africa was home, but now we just feel Brooklyn Park is home.
Well, it was known all over the eastern half of the U.S. that Minnesota Territory would now be open for settlement and that land was available. And the word got out that the land was good for farming, and the soil was rich, so people came pouring in. Brooklyn Township was settled in 1853 to 1855. The township was formally organized in 1858. At the time that Minnesota became a state.
It was 1870. August was the month, and my great-grandfather's name was August Hessman, and his wife Henriette. They heard that there was some property available through his wife Henrietta, who was a Harkup. This is my great-grandfather's place. The barn that's behind us was already here. They purchased the property from Matthew Blowers. And then my grandfather in 1883 built the home that we are currently in today.
Some of the history said there was 14 families. I've actually found many more than that came here from a town or area called Adrian, Michigan. And they settled, all the families settled in the northwest area of Brooklyn Township near Osseo. And there was a town near Adrian, Michigan called Brooklyn, so they liked that name. It had been used before for many cities to the east, so they took the name Brooklyn.
So there's a sneak peek at the history of the city of Brooklyn Park, and again, thanks to Zipporah and Daryl, and again, some of the images you see from the Brooklyn's books, so again, thanks to Daryl and that historical society that has a number of pictures, and we'll tap them again when we get to the City of Brooklyn Center as well. Also, Bill Schreiber, who many of you probably know, is also in the video, a potato farmer from the Brooklyn Park area of the past, and also a state legislator. And so he had some great video as well, so later on you see some of the people actually picking the potatoes and going through the process of getting the potatoes off the farm. So wonderful to see Jim Kraut-Kramer as well, a former mayor, involved in the video. Jack Umlin, who was very key to this commission in the early days as well, is on talking about Edinburgh and the impact that have. Mayor Lundy as well in the video. So thanks to Roger and Matt, they did a wonderful job, and now we step ahead. We give them a short breather here for a week or two, and then we step to the city of Maple Grove as the next city that we'll be working with, and they have a very active historical society. So we're very excited to meet up with that group and get the next process going.
Is Jesse Ventura in the video?
Would you like Jesse to be in the video? that was debated. There was discussion about that.
I just had to ask.
He was not in the video, but there is a quick picture of Garrison Keeler in the video as well, so you'll have to watch for that and see the connection to the city of Brooklyn Park. But no, Jesse did not make the cut, unfortunately. So thank you again to Daryl and Zipporah for your help with the project.
Thank you.
And while Tim is heading up here, I will say that Roger is expecting to be a father for the first time, the person who produced this show, and so he will need a little break before he moves on to Maple Grove. And Tim will come up here and talk in a moment. And I do want to mention one other thing while he gets up here, is that Roger has done some amazing drone footage. I mean, he was flying around the Brooklyn Park water towers. He flew over 610. He flew over the Coon Rapids Dam because it butts up with Brooklyn Park. And it's just some phenomenal shots taken in early morning. It's all about lighting and sunshine and sunrise and sunset and all that. And when you see the show, you'll know what I mean. But we'll turn it over to Tim for his section.
Thank you. That's a tough act to follow. And I'll be brief. Just a couple of updates on some projects that we've been working on that we've talked about before. We're still in the process of moving all of our Channel 16 automation gear back to our head end here at this facility. Right now, we have 5 cities complete, and we have the rest will follow over the next several months. We have some work in the head end that needs to be done to continue the process in order, we have to expand something, a router or some sort of patch bay, something like that. It's Sean's bailiwick, not mine, but thanks to Sean and Jamie for helping with that. Believe it or not, it seems like we just talked about finishing up Brooklyn Center City Hall project. We're actually doing a couple of updates on that already, changing a couple things out. But we are working with New Hope on planning for their new City Hall and Council Chambers setup. I believe they are planning after this swim season to break ground, but correct me if I'm wrong. And working with them to get the latest and greatest technology in their council chambers that's most appropriate. And believe it or not, this does kick off kind of the next round of replacements for all 9 of our cities over the next several years. Probably Golden Valley, we've been talking about with them, coming up, and Robbinsdale will probably be the next one after that that we need to talk about. Some of these systems are going on 8 years old already, and we expect the life of a system to be 8 to 10 years. And we're going to try and replace only the gear that needs to be replaced. On a lot of the presentation gear in the council chambers themselves is still functional and not too far out of date. So that's what's happening with that. Otherwise, you can advance the graphic. To further my knowledge and to make sure that we are doing the best we can for our cities and recommending gear and equipment, I'll be attending InfoComm, which is in Orlando, Florida in June, which sounds hot and muggy. It's a trade show not unlike NAB in Las Vegas, has over 1,000 exhibitors, 40,000 plus attendees, provides the opportunity to see the latest equipment and stuff. So we want to make sure that we're getting the next round of systems is what needs to be, what they need to be for the cities to serve them the best. We are also in the process, as Dave mentioned, through with the survey results stuff he gave, working with CEL on our website updates. We'll be changing up a little bit, I think, how the city council meetings and stuff will manifest themselves on the internet. They'll still be certainly available and easy for the public to find. But they will be folded more into the main website rather than a separate website, we believe, at this point. But that is in progress and something that's been taking quite a bit of our time. And then other notes, I left at your desk this channel guide. This is a printable channel guide. It's available on the website if you want to direct people to it. Tells you where to find which channels on both the Comcast system and the CenturyLink system. We get a lot of questions, well, where do we see that now? And so hopefully that will help. And that's really all I have for right now. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to make up an answer.
Questions?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Barb from the CCX Create department. Her department has been extremely busy with all kinds of fun things, and not the least of which is, you may not notice this, but we actually have some new lighting in here. So Barb, you can explain all that.
Yes, since our last meeting in February, we spent, I think, it was about the last 3 weeks of March putting in new lighting systems in both Studio B and Studio A. So if you look up, it's all, well, most of it is LED now. They went through, we actually had someone come in and bring our grids up to code for the future, and we put in a DMX system in both rooms, which allows us, each of these lights have addresses, and we are able to do a lot of different things, color changing, et cetera. So, excuse me. Instead of me turning on lights and flashing them, I had my staff just do a quick little 30-second. So this is a Harvey Dustin quick little preview. Probably the greatest thing, I'm just telling you right now, worked here for 30 years, and lighting was always like my exercise routine, because every time you had to dim a light or change a color, you had to run up and down the ladder. I don't know what's going to happen to me now, because now we can just use a nice little dimmer, we can hit a button, and the lights will change color. So it's really great. So we're really excited about it. The cool thing, too, is that I'm excited about is it's green. So hopefully our electrical bills are going to go down quite a bit. Next up, we celebrated National Volunteer Week. I'm sure some of you cities do that as well. And so what we do each year is we have special drawings for our volunteers, popcorn every day. And so this is just an image of our grand prize winner. Every year we try to give away a grand prize, which is usually a hard drive, which is very coveted by our producers, editors. And so Scott Brose, he produces Adapted Sports. He was the winner of this year. So it's something we try to do every year. We had a lot of fun. Go ahead, Sean, and change. We also, during Volunteer Week, celebrated Super Saturday #1. We do 2 all-day trainings a year where we offer all of our classes. And so this one was a real success. I think we had 14 or 15 people who came in. And it just... having them here all day, they get to know each other better, and we do tend to see a better rate of them coming in and using the facilities as well. Also, too, I just wanted to point out that Javi Cedillo, one of our studio managers, won a Best of the Midwest Achievement Award. This is sponsored by Wisconsin Community Media. And what made it special is it was a video that he put together for a volunteer gala last year, which really highlights the volunteers at NWCT. I think you guys saw a short bit of it at probably one of the November meeting. And so what's really nice about it is he's winning awards, and this goes out to a 9-state area. So we're really proud of his achievement. So I wanted to make sure and mention that. And then just a couple of things that we do in the works. I've got a great staff. They're busy with volunteers, but they do a lot of work on the side as well. And we're currently working with other staff people with the website redesign, and I just really wanted to really compliment Tamisha Toure. She's doing a great job. She's got great attention to detail. She's working basically, she's the one who I'm kind of putting in charge of taking over the CCX Create and making sure it's done right, because she's the right person for the job. She and Nikki Jackett are also working with a new scheduling system that we put in called Rooshare. This is actually an online system where our volunteers can actually go online, book equipment, book facilities, and staff just has to okay it. They can go in and they can network with other volunteers. We've been working on it for a while. They put in a lot of hours, and we're kind of in the test pattern right now. I don't really have a date for deployment, but sometime this summer. So that's kind of what we've been working on. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
And that, I think, wraps it up.
Okay, any other business? Otherwise, motion to adjourn and then a tour.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.